Ladies, gentlemen, and serum of all ages, with No Rest for the Wicked now out in full swing in early access, I know a lot of people getting into it are just sort of realizing it is a much more challenging game than they might have expected. While there are, of course, various conversations to be had about how the balancing might shift in one way or another over early access before proper release, that doesn't mean that those of us here right now can't enjoy what we have. And one of the best ways to both increase your enjoyment and decrease the feeling of difficulty in the early game section of No Rest for the Wicked is to understand how gear works in the game and which weapons are right for you, and how to make a weapon that you do like even better than its just base moveset. Starting off then at the top though, let's be a bit more general and talk about the loot and gear and the way it works in the game as a whole. There are unique rarity pieces of gear that drop from certain bosses or quests, but aside from that, every single piece of loot that you find in the game is RNG. There are different quality levels of chests that you can see just sort of visually by looking at them, but they spawn in different locations every time. But the most important thing here is while the rarity of the chests can cycle, the actual location of them does seem somewhat set, and once you open them, they will respawn in the same place that they are on a timer. Not progression, not on loading screen, on a timer, which means that you can kill every enemy in an area and just sort of run in circles looting all the chests once in a while as a sort of AFK farm if you really wanted to, as enemies don't respawn in this game aside from specific circumstances. It's just sort of a function of the way the game works that you can open these chests every once in a while. I haven't properly timed this specifically yet, but I know that I've returned the same chest around 30 minutes later without any load screens or anything in between, and it was just there ready to be looted again. So that is a functionality of the game to keep in mind. Then past that, we should talk about just how gear and stats actually work within the game. White items are commons, they just have the base moveset, one singular rune slot filled, and no effects. If you like the moveset of a white item, you can then enchant it in Sacrament to upgrade it, which turns it into either a blue item, a rare, which has up to 4 stat affecting effects of various power, things like health regain on parry, or full stamina regain on parry. I find this also particularly effective with the current balance. Purple items are cursed items, which have much stronger positive effects than rares do, but also come with one negative effect, which can be pretty punishing, like experience loss on death, or even experience loss when taking damage every single time, which is of course pretty brutal. Generally speaking, I stick to blue items as much as possible unless you can find a purple item with a negative effect that just won't really impact you too badly, with the note that if you are taking on a powerful boss that is killing you multiple times in a row, some of those purple items actually get a lot more enticing, like sacrificing the XP that you currently have in your bar in order to just use a stronger weapon and give yourself a better chance of just getting the job done. But that is entirely up to you, personally, in the moment. Then there are of course also the unique items, which are fully preset effects, preset runes, fully kitted out, and quite strong. But it is worth noting from what I can see so far, you definitely can make items stronger than uniques, it just takes patience and using the crafting system, and of course also luck because of the RNG required. You can also do further things with enchantment at the vendor in Sacrament, such as putting extra runes, which are the focused cost skills on weapons, which let you customize their moveset even more to your liking, and you can also get runes for this either by finding them as runes in the wild, extracting them from other weapons, which destroys the weapons they came from, or some of them you can even have sold by the vendor herself, and some pretty good ones in that pool as well, such as Return, which you can channel to literally just go to Sacrament from any place on the map at any time. And then you can of course fast travel to your last whisper from there, so you can essentially just use this as an oh no, oh god, oh shit button if you just run out of everything but have the time to cast it and you want to reset a bit. As well, you can of course just upgrade gear at the blacksmith, so don't forget about that either. Now, with all that covered though, let's get started into the more specifics of it, which is actual weapon movesets for the weapons I've seen in the early game so far. There are upwards of 90 weapon types in the game, theoretically, according to the devs, so obviously we don't have access to all of them this early in this early stage of it, but I've encountered more than 10 separate properly varied moveset weapons in the first few hours of play, so let's talk about their movesets, how good they feel, how good they are, and that way I can just sort of give you an idea of what weapons you might want to seek out if you like the look of them. On which note, if you do want to seek out specific loot, the best method I really know of so far is genuinely just that plan of clearing out all mobs in an area and just doing rotations of all the chests, trying to catch them on the respawn timer. You know, that is if you want a more AFK method, because again, all loot is sort of RNG aside from uniques, so anything can come from anywhere. And so aside from that, the best real advice is honestly just play the game, kill the things, open the loot, keep going. Moving on to movesets then, the first one is of course fists. You get 3 regular punches and then a hefty uppercut combo finisher for your light attacks. Charged attacks are just charged punches, dodge attack is just a bonus punch to start your 4-punch light combo, sprint attack is a kick, and backstab is actually hilariously like a German suplex you just do to your enemies. One of my favorite moments that I've had is when my weapons just broke mid-combat, because they can break when you hit enemies with them, so I just threw a guy on the floor and he exploded, which was goddamn brutal. Moveset honestly feels great for fists. If there was some way to actually gear yourself to build yourself in some sort of way to get some scaling with unarmed combat, it would actually be very fun. But for obvious reasons, without that that sort of scaling, you can't upgrade your fists, and so the damage falls off quite a bit early, sadly, unless there's a way to boost it with gear later on that I don't know about. Then we have the one-handed knife, which is a quick 3-stab combo on the light attacks. The charge attacks are actually pretty long charges for a reasonably chunky attack, but with low range, so you don't get many opportunities to fully charge a weapon like this. It can work if you like the idea of it, but I wouldn't call it a top-tier moveset by any means. As for dodge and sprint attacks, they're just pretty simple stab follow-ups. After that, we have one-handed straight swords, the default weapon really, 2 slashes and then a thrust with extra range and damage for its light combo, which is decent, and the thrust especially is quite good. Charge attacks are the same ones as the lights, but heavier. I personally, when using this, especially like doing 2 lights into a charged thrust. It just feels like the best combo to time ratio to me when you have the actual opportunity for it. The dodge attack then is just an overhead swing, but the sprint attack is a proper thrust with a good bit of bonus range on it, and that's always pretty nice in a weapon moveset. Then we have the one-handed curved sword. This one has a 4 combo of light slices, not high range, but very good speed and decent damage. The charged attacks have a sort of combo effect where if you time a charged attack right after a previous one, it will charge the next one much faster, but this only goes in a combo of 2. But you can sort of keep this rhythm up until you run out of stamina or get flinched if you want to, whatever happens first. Then both the sprint and the dodge attacks for this weapon are forward thrusts with great momentum, so just in general, curved sword is definitely a highly rated weapon, at least in my opinion. Past that, we have the two-handed greatsword, a classic weapon type. The light attacks are an overhead chop, a forward thrust, and then a cleaving slash in the front, but the charged attacks are where this really shines, with the charged first attack doing massive damage, but also having just insane forward momentum and range, letting you really sort of charge your attacks a mile away from your opponent once you get used to the range on it and your opponent's movement. The dodge attack is a cleaving slash with some decent forward momentum that leads into a slightly altered light attack combo, but the sprinting attack is only sort of okay, it's not great. Overall, your bread and butter with this weapon is the charge attack for sure, but obviously that also means that there are some fights where your enemies will just be so fast that it will feel too awkward to find your moments to get a proper hit in. So while I think that this will be many people's favorite weapon as far as the satisfaction that it gives you, I also think it will cause a lot of frustration for the people that use it compared to some others. But there are multiple main weapon slots in this game, so you can always alternate. The reach and the damage of a greatsword is top tier, but it will also just be completely hard countered by certain enemy types. After that then is one-handed axe. This essentially just feels like a meatier version of the straight sword moveset, longer windup, lower range, but heavier hitting actual attacks. A 3 combo for the light attacks. Charge attacks have a much higher range on them and feels like what they want you to use with it. It's a 2 charged combo that you can use pretty repeatedly, and both the dodge and sprint attacks with this are a chopping slam, which does feel like it might be a bit hard to hit smaller targets with. In my opinion, the range isn't necessarily great. Overall though, it is a fine moveset for sure, just not one that feels particularly strong to me as of yet. I'd call it pretty middle. Then we have one-handed mace, and this is 3 hits but only 2 inputs for the light combo to make it happen. So technically it is just a 2-input combo. The fun part of this though is because the charge attacks match the light attacks for the weapon, that means you can do a singular light attack to start the combo, then charge the second input to have both of these hits count as charged for bonus damage. The sprint and dodge attacks aren't particularly impressive with this, but the backstab is pretty visceral, just slamming down repeatedly on enemies' spines. This as a weapon has just been one of my personal favorite movesets so far. Then we have the one-handed hammer separate to the mace, and this is to the mace what the axe was to the sword, just much slower and deliberate as a playstyle, less range, less speed, but heavier hits on every swing. The charge attacks have nearly no range on them, which makes me really not like the moveset personally instantly, and the dodge and sprint attacks aren't the most impressive either. After that we have the two-handed staff, and the attack moveset isn't really anything to write home about for this at all, because the magic in this game is all in the rune systems, and the staffs are basically just large storage units for many different runes and stats to let you play a more magic-focused build. So the quote-unquote moveset is not really meant to be beefy. As well, worth mentioning, there is a bow in early game, but it is not a primary weapon, it is an offhand. It costs 15 focus to fire a shot from it, or you can spend 100 focus for a multi-shot. It's pretty cool, but not as cool as it could have been if it were a main weapon. Regardless though, if you find yourself using a one-handed weapon and don't want to use a shield, this is actually a solid offhand option for some ranged utility when it's needed. Then we have the two-handed scythe. This actually works essentially like a two-handed version of the curved sword moveset, and I love it a lot personally. 4-hit light attack combo, and then the charged attack has some serious range and forward momentum, but also has that cool combo effect too, where if you do multiple charge attacks in a row and time the inputs correctly, the charge time of the following attack will be reduced, and it makes it extremely satisfying to use and learn your openings and timings on enemies, and the dodge and sprint attack are both decently long range attacks as well with high damage. Personally, this has the strongest moveset of any weapon types that I've tried out in my own hands, at least as far as it just matches my playstyle well enough that no other weapon has felt the same as this one has to me. That said, there are just a few weapons that I know of existing in the early game that I've just not had the luck to have drop for myself. There There are daggers I know exist. They do tons of hits per input and per combo, and are best paired, of course, with effects like health regen on a hit or other things that would scale well with attack speed. Generally speaking, you know if you're someone who likes daggers in these types of games, and this would be no exception. There's a two-handed hammer that I know exists, essentially just a big smashy stick, which might even be slower than the greatsword from what I've heard, so theoretically even more damage per hit to go along with that. Then there is also a two-handed axe, which functions more as a sort of cleaving weapon than the other two-handers mentioned so far. And that pretty much does do it then, everyone, for now. Some general loot and gear information and tips, as well as just a quick rundown of the movesets of every different weapon type I have seen or heard of in the first few hours of the game as of right now. Of course, there may have been some that I haven't seen yet or even heard about, so if you do know of anything that I haven't mentioned here, feel free to tell people about them in the comments down below so they know if that's what they'd actually really like to be playing with. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.